Hello, Backstory Preachers. I'm Sarah Holler with week 4 of Preach, Come What May. In week 1, we considered who it is we are bringing into the pulpit. On those Sundays, we'll address controversial texts or challenging issues in our common life together. Are we likely to come in as our own orientation to be more of a pastor or a prophet? What are our anxieties and what are our convictions when we step into the pulpit to preach come what may? In week 2, we considered who are the people in our pews? What's going on in their lives? What's going on in their common life together as a congregation? What's going on in the world around them? What obstacles have they had to overcome to be present that Sunday morning? What have they brought into your shared sacred space? What hopes and longings and brokenness and desires to be comforted, to be encouraged, to find solace, maybe to be challenged. What are they bringing, and how will you carry them along in a loving way? In week 3, we considered what is the preacher's motivation and what invitation to transformation have they heard in these challenging texts or these controversial issues in our common life? And how have they been particularly clear in giving God the verb? And how is it that they are hoping to transform hearts into life-giving ways? And how are they responding to the call to God's good news, to God's better way? And have they moved away from rants and an inclination to demonize other people? And how do we as preachers check ourselves, check our internal motivations? And what practices do we put into place to assure that the invitation is to something life-giving and that we have been clear in giving God the verb? And this week, we consider how it is we will handle the inevitable criticism that may follow preaching challenging text and controversial issues in our common life. I say inevitable criticism, for we have no guarantee how our message will be heard, nor how it will resonate, and what the response may be. I have a friend who was telling me they are very resistant to preaching controversial text and common life issues, challenging issues, because they worry about visitors. What does it mean for someone to come for the first time and hear something challenging and not knowing the context and not knowing that this was not the subject of every sermon or the tone of every sermon? Will they ever come back? And I've had other colleagues say that they are reluctant to preach controversial issues and challenging texts because they have concerns about offending their givers. And they say, we need the participation of all our members. We're not very large, and not just their financial gifts, but also just their presence in being in the body, their prayers in the body, their participation in the body. We can't afford to lose any of our members. So I'm reluctant to say something that might offend them and send them away. And these concerns and these anxieties, these fears are real and weighty and maybe even sometimes realistic. And I was I've been thinking about Jesus's preaching and how it is very likely that many people heard Jesus preach once. They were in essence a visitor into his congregation that day. And on long days when he was preaching the Sermon on the Mount, it is quite likely people showed up midway through, might have left early. There were times when they only heard the one sermon he was preaching in front of them that day. And Jesus preached the message he was called to preach. And he didn't let the context of the day, whether people would be there to hear better news, easier news the next day, dissuade him for preaching what needed to be said. Easy news, comforting news, loving news, or more challenging news, whatever was the call that needed to be, the message that needed to be proclaimed, he proclaimed. My sense is that we're to follow that example, and that we pray about the text in front of us. We pray about the message we're being called to articulate, and then we trust God, and we trust the prayer lives of those who hear that message to work out the appropriate response. Our responsibility is to articulate that message, that news that needs to be brought forth. And when we have done that well, the response is not our responsibility. We leave that, it's like an offering. We leave that on the altar to God, and that's between God and the people who have heard the message to work out how it is it will resonate and how it is they will respond to the invitation offered. I'm also believe that we need to be prepared to handle direct criticism, not just the wandering away, but direct criticism. I do not agree with what you said. That made me uncomfortable. I don't think that that's right. And when that comes to us, how is it we will be prepared to respond? It may be immediately after giving the sermon, as people are leaving and we're bidding them goodbye. And what does that mean, and what will our reaction be? And there are certain times when we are really vulnerable, and there's certain times that it's not appropriate to engage in longer conversations. There are times when it is just going to be too difficult to be fully present to this person and to deal with their criticism, their critique, their dis-ease in good ways. And my sense is that in these times, rather than becoming defensive and rather than feeling like we have to respond in the moment, the better way is to get curious and to be more at ease and take time and say to these people, I'm really interested in hearing more about that. I would like to hear what your thoughts are. I'd like some time to be present to you in that. Can we make time to do that together? My sense is, and my experience is that people then feel that you are willing to engage with them, that you're taking them seriously, that you have a desire to stay in relationship with them. It also gives you the necessary time to be more detached and more secure. So deferring deferring the conversation to a time where you can be more present is not a dismissal. It is taking good care of both of you to try to ensure the health of your ongoing relationship. So, how is it that we're going to deal with criticism after proclaiming challenging text and controversial issues in our common life together? I think it's really helpful for us to contemplate our strategies, to write them down, and to keep them handy, so that when they arise, when these critiques and this criticism arise, we're not caught off guard, but we have a natural ease into effective strategies. So I invite you this week to think about how it is you will manage the criticisms that may follow, preaching come what may, and how you will remind yourself that our call is to proclaim and offer the invitation to transformation, and the response is not of us. So, dear hearts, blessings on your contemplations and blessings on the strategies you will make for yourselves for preaching come what may. Thank you.